Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Learning Machine Learning series of webinars. Today we're having another interesting guest, Rebecca Franks, an Android GDE based in South Africa. And as we usually do, we'll go straight to the meat of today's episode. I'm going to ask Rebecca to do a very brief introduction of herself, and then we'll dive right in. Rebecca?
Cool, thanks, Amidi. So I'm based in Johannesburg, and I have been doing Android for, I don't know, it's like 8 years now. Joined the GDE program about 4 years ago. I don't know, time is is fleeting at the moment. I don't really remember when I joined things. And I've been doing Android for a while. I've dabbled a bit in looking at TensorFlow Lite and doing some working with MLKit and doing some custom models as well, and mainly sort of kind of going into or focusing on the image side of TensorFlow and like machine learning stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much about me.
Oh, interesting. So I mean, these days we're getting used to two things. One is buzzwords around machine learning and AI, and on the other hand is some really cool apps that we, come to use every day. So I think I'll just merge two questions in one, and which is someone who's already a software engineer, and then you've been doing what they call traditional programming. You've been programming and building software. What do you understand as machine learning or artificial intelligence or intelligence in apps? And what are some of the apps that you have used or worked with that really epitomize this whole intelligent apps or machine learning in apps?
Sure, I guess it's a good starting point. For me, I think machine learning and AI has become like kind of more of a term and a fuzzy term that people use to describe kind of how they think of something that's smart and something that maybe that we didn't have before, even though that's not really like the official definition of what machine learning and what AI is. But I think we've come to sort of accept it as more of a like, this is a smarter app, and this is how we describe something that is smarter than sort of the average, like just putting in some data and like sending it up to a server and getting a result. So for me, machine learning has been more about like obviously looking at the more technical definition is more like providing a bunch of data. We don't really have like a set algorithm for how we could detect or decide what we're looking at. So training this model on a bunch of big data, large amounts of data, and then using that, generating a model from that data, and then taking obviously more inputs and teaching your algorithm, or the algorithm kind of learns as it goes. So the more inputs you get it, the more data you give it, the better it gets, and the higher accuracy that it gets. So for me, I think it's quite interesting because I've seen like a lot of things that kind of say we use AI. For instance, one thing that I found was quite interesting was there was this cupcake ATM machine that I saw at a local mall here in South Africa, and the tagline was, if I just get it quickly, it was something along the lines of, "We use AI, artificial intelligence, to dispense freshly baked goods." And I kind of had like a little laugh to myself because I thought, what is that? Like, where are you using the AI? Are you using it to dispense the stuff from the machine, which that is just like a vending machine? Or like, are you maybe doing some smart stuff where you are like trying to report back from the vending machine what the demand is, and maybe you can see the demand of this is growing high, so maybe your automated robot is now making cakes in the background. I don't know. But like, I think it's just become more and more like prominent that people are using these terms, and it's kind of just like becoming so like not really part of the tech industry, but like some like people outside of the tech industry use it to describe something that is like maybe that we haven't seen before, that's a little bit like smarter in some cases. But I mean, it could be just using some normal if statements for all we know. I mean, we don't really know what things are doing under the hood. But yeah, so that's kind of like I see a lot of the ML stuff as being like a lot of where I see a lot of it is with images and vision stuff. So like processing, getting cool information out of your images based on what it's picking up and what it's learned before. And I think one of the cool examples that I've seen is how a lot of technologies are using it to create more accessible things for people that may have some kind of disabilities. So for instance, I really like the I think Google's released that new like real-time auto captioning feature on Android. So it's like a setting that you enable. Like this one for me is so cool because not only does it help caption videos that don't have captions built into it, so like Instagram stories, but it also not only does it enable a really cool experience for people that are hard of hearing, but also just for the everyday person that doesn't want to turn on audio. So you can be like in some situation where you don't want your audio to play, and it's really nice to have this auto caption feature on. So I think like the really, really cool stuff with ML and all these cool applications of it is really when it starts to benefit people in that kind of way, not just like the cool, like let's stylize this photo. Like obviously that's cool, but it doesn't like the more accessible things that help our lives become the easier or where I think is really, really cool and useful.
Yeah, that's. I think I sort of share your sentiments around that. I know people have had different experiences when it comes to things like maybe photos, or when it comes to things like recognizing people when you get tagged in pictures, or for instance when your picture appears somewhere and maybe the person actually didn't even tag you but posted it on some social network, and you sort of like want to know like, okay, who posted my picture, where, doing what. I'm not sure it's safe for the internet. So I think there are a few cool applications around just the idea of computer vision, identifying things, and where, in quotes, regular traditional programming could have found this not impossible but extremely difficult with lots of code to try and really wrap your head around that. But speaking of even the fun apps, where you do things like you detect a face and then you put glasses and you do things like that, have you had to do anything along lines of a fun project or in your work where actually being able to analyze a picture or video or detect something in real time, you found it useful and then you sort of like played around with the technology?
Yeah, I think I've done quite a few of the examples and like played around quite a bit with using the vision stuff. So picking up where eyes are on a face and just like adding some big eyes, like heart eyes and stuff. So yeah, I've definitely played around with that and have found it very useful. As far as my work goes, every day I have played around with a few things. I don't really want to talk too much about what it is, but nothing is released yet in the app that I work on every day with machine learning. But I say yet because hopefully it will come soon.
Okay. That's really cool. So I think one question that usually pops to my mind is when you want to get started with either a new technology or a new feature or functionality, right? A lot of things that come to your face is you see this shiny video, they've released this product, here's how to get started, very well curated, intro video, 60 seconds. Does it really take 60 seconds to get to the first hello world when you're implementing something? And I know Android, Firebase, TensorFlow, like, what is it like when, as someone who doesn't have necessarily a machine learning background, you get, introduced to this new feature and then you want to try it out? So what does the hello world experience look like when you're trying out a new technology like machine learning?
Sure. I think like 2 years ago, it looked a lot harder than what it is today. There's definitely been a lot of improvements in just getting your own sort of custom stuff going. And that's definitely made true by using like things such as AutoML, where you can like upload your own pictures and like work with your own data set and use that model that you generate automatically without any code and use that within your Android apps. one such, there is like quite recently, actually, I think last week, and I think this coming week, there's going to be quite a lot of content on the Android developers channel with regards to using TensorFlow Lite and the new Firebase ML kit stuff, and just working with all of that stuff. So definitely keep your eye out for that. But I would recommend there is a really nice code lab to try and recognize flowers in an image. And that basically walks you through looking at using your own custom model, training it up, putting that model inside your Android app, and then actually taking an image and putting it inside or through this model, and then getting the results from that. So that's kind of like the sort of intro into it. I would say that's for like custom model stuff, but also if you wanted to use something that you actually don't want to make your own custom model, you just want to, for instance, you want to use the smart reply feature that Google has. There is a bunch of pre-made models already available that you can literally just slot into your app with ML kits. So you don't even need any background knowledge of how it works. You basically just initialize these APIs, you add a Gradle dependency and start it, and then put that in your app and process your text or process your image through it. And you don't have to actually train the model yourself. You don't have to even know what the model is doing under the hood. The Firebase ML kit handles a lot of that for you. So it really makes it easy, and you don't really need any background knowledge on machine learning or TensorFlow to get started with those kind of things.
Okay, so we've seen some really cool demos, where someone whips out a phone, points it at a crop or at something and identifies whether it has a disease or not, or people trying to scan receipts to see whether you could, come up with something, or people saying, okay, you could check something and check whether something is fraud or not, whether the picture is fake or real. When you actually do go test out some of these new APIs, how difficult is it to really take either an existing app and then sort of embed either an on-device model that will work offline? I mean, I always wonder, like, how do you take something on device and put it and still have an app that is 10 or 12 or 15 meg? Like, everybody wants their apps to be, when you're working in sub-Saharan Africa and even like emerging markets. Is it that realistic? How I mean, I saw your demo with the knick-knack snacks, and I mean, I was blown away back then. I think that was like 2 years ago. Like you said, it's probably easier to do that right now. But that whole process of, getting an image, creating fake data, or like sort of like getting more data to make your model, richer or, better, and then embedding it in your app. Is it really that easy? Because I've never done it before, and I'm just wondering what your own experience is, someone who's actually at least good with it.
There can be like a few quirks here and there, but definitely since 2 years ago, it has gotten a lot easier. So on Firebase, you can create an auto ML model. So you basically just like, there isn't any command line, there isn't any code that you need to write when you create this model. You just upload the images and like the sort of classifications that you want for those images, and you can generate and download a model that you would input into your Android app. You're mentioning about like downloading a model and the network speeds and possibly like bloating your app. You can package a model. You can either package your model and ship it with your application, so it would increase the file size to by maybe a couple of megs, which is obviously quite a lot in some cases if you're not looking to do that. And another option, if maybe your feature that you're packaging is not like, it's not critical, so maybe you don't want all your users to have it, then I would recommend using or putting it on Firebase and hosting it on there. There is an option to have hosted models on Firebase, and then obviously when the user needs that specific feature, they can go and request that data and then be aware of the download that's going to happen in order to get that model and get that feature within the app. So there are ways to work around it, and models are getting smaller. You can make your model smaller by like optimizing it and doing some stuff to make it as small as possible. But yeah, the reality is it is going to add a little bit extra to your app either like upfront when the person downloads it from the store, or later on when they want to use the feature.
Okay, cool. I'm going to digress just a little bit, step back, because when I introduced you, when you introduced yourself, you talked about being an Android GDE. You talked about having how many years of Android GDE experience. Definitely, you must have had another couple of 4, 5, 3 years of just general software engineering practice. Usually, a lot of times when people, get into technologies, whether it's learning a new technology, they try to figure out how long does it really take to become an expert? What has been your sort of software engineering journey? And if you met someone right now who wanted to either get into technology or was into technology and wanted to try out something new, what kind of advice would you give for someone starting out an information technology career or adding some skills to their present skill set?
Cool. So I think if you're just starting out, I think for me, the most valuable thing that I've found from my career is just finding a community. So before I joined a community, like for instance, the GDG Johannesburg, the local Google developer group, I don't know, everything kind of felt a lot harder and a lot more difficult to approach. And I just didn't feel like I didn't really enjoy my career as much as I did after joining a community. So definitely find a local community that's doing the stuff that you're interested in, and engage with that community. So if that's by asking questions or just getting to know the people that are talking, or becoming someone that does contribute by speaking or writing up what you know, your knowledge, that'll definitely make your career path and your progression a lot easier, because you'll have people around you that are doing similar things, and they just it makes it a lot more exciting for me, at least, because there's people around me doing similar things, and it's very engaging, and like, oh wow, this person's done this, maybe I should also look into something like that. And you'll learn a lot more as well by just hearing what other people are doing and how they're approaching problems. So I think my number one tip for that kind of thing is just find people around you or nearby in a local community, online or in person, and just make the most of that for your learning path. The second question, remind me what that was again. Learning a new tech. I think you're muted.
So the second question is, so for you in particular, what was your absolute journey? Did it start from college, university, or did you kind of like, would you call yourself a self-taught programmer, the holy grail of self-taught programmer?
So I went sort of, I guess you'd say, the traditional routes. I didn't do programming at university. I was fresh into university. I did a 3-year degree in computer science and didn't know any computer science or anything when I started. Was one of the few that didn't. So it was very scary. The first few months were like, what is happening? Because everyone else knew what was going on and I didn't, which was very scary. But after about 6 months, I got a little bit more comfortable with working and just like coding, and it kind of became a bit more exciting. So I did my 3-year degree, and then I did a 1-year honors, which gives me a BSc honors. And then I went on to join a graduate program for a year, and I learned a lot about different technologies and different back-end stuff, front-end, web, mobile. And then from that point on, I kind of decided I really, really enjoy the mobile stuff and Android specifically. So I decided to look for a job that was more focused on that. And yeah, that was just kind of where I got into looking at Android and working with it a lot more, because it kind of really interested me a lot more than the other kind of positions.
Okay, really, really cool. So you did have and I think this is very common with a lot of people. You have a computer science background, or you go to school to do IT. It doesn't seem like school fills in all the, checks all the boxes you need. You come into the industry pretty afraid or scared of whether or not you can handle it. My next question, and this just came to my head. So when do you know you're ready for the industry? Like right now that you are called a Google developer expert, do you feel like a Google developer expert? And are you done and dusted with imposter syndrome? And you have to be very honest about this. You don't need to give us a cliche answer.
No, I think I still question a lot of my things. Like just today, I was like, should I be on this show talking with a needy about this stuff? So it's definitely you'll never feel ready. I think it's just something like I still remember graduating university and then getting my first job and joining, and I thought to myself, cool, I've studied everything I need to know. Apparently, according to the university. So yeah, let's go. And joining, and like within the first, I would say, first week of real work, I was like, oh my goodness, I actually have no idea what any of this is or what these people are doing, like at all. So I think you'll never be ready for anything that, like, unless you just try. So you have to realize that, and not hold yourself back from doing anything because you think you can't do it. You won't know unless you try. So and you're going to learn on the job, right? Everything has to happen at some point, so you might as well try and get somewhere. And hopefully someone will employ you with the skills you have, and you can learn and like grow in that position, right?
Okay, so cool. So I'm going to take a quick brief detour back to, like, general subject of AI and ML. So I mean, as you look at the sort of, let me say first of all, like the capabilities of I would say the machine learning capabilities that a mobile SDK or a library like MLKit can bring to you. What are the areas that are sort of like really very interesting to you, either because you look at the alternative way of doing them, or because you're just kind of like really impressed by the direction in which the technology is going, and then you look at things like a phone and look at all the things the phone has. It has a camera, it has audio. What are things, or maybe even, I would say, industries or sectors where you feel with the way machine learning is going, if it really does fulfill its promise, either humanity or software developers would really, really like these sort of applications? Yeah, so I mean, there are things around, pretty complex, but like there's things around, computer vision, speech recognition. We talk about, labeling, translation. Are there areas that you're saying these are actually great machine learning problems, and these are things that are great problems that machine learning can be thrown at, and then machine learning on the mobile device or in the Android world? I like the direction in which this is going.
Yeah, I think definitely anything to do with like video or images. I think we've seen a lot of like innovation from looking at things like Snapchat and Instagram with their kind of filters and the cool things you can do with that. So I think there's definitely a lot more room for things to grow there as well. When you're looking at things like, I know there's like controversy around this, but like deep fakes, for instance. So the ability to like put an ED face on me and I speak and it like looks like it's an ED speaking. And I think that's like a super interesting side to all of this. I mean, obviously it's been used at the moment for negative things, but definitely the research aspect of that, and just like the possibilities of that kind of thing in different contexts. So what else you can do with video if you have more information about what the video contains. Actually, one cool example that I saw quite recently, it wasn't on a mobile device, but maybe it'll get there, where I think it's a plugin for like After Effects, where you basically can apply like that stylized photo example that is used for photos, but that like you draw your own kind of stylized thing and apply it to a video, and it like kind of applies it for that whole video. And this you can like, obviously, like the example was Homer Simpson being like drawn in 3D, and then only that one frame applied to like the whole video, which I thought was pretty cool. So mobile devices are getting more powerful, so we could start doing potentially more things like that, where we start doing more video processing and more not just like static images and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that means we should get ready for more fascinating entertainment apps, more fascinating things around video and pictures and images. It kind of seems like we've already done a lot in that area, and then you have one day you have a new app that comes up and has a very interesting name and then blows everybody's mind away, and the way people are mixing audio and video. I think it's a lot of comic relief for a very challenging period in the world right now, where yes, you could obviously see why a lot of these apps are really blowing up right now. So I think I would almost more or less try and pivot, like I said, it's very short, very brief conversation. I want to really pivot into like the tools or the guide for when you're actually building a machine learning, or the tools you have in machine learning, the ones you're aware of, or as an Android developer, like what is really like the scope that you're currently aware of, and sort of like how would you advise and guide people to go through? I know there are blog posts that I would probably even just still link, but like as it is right now, before we get all the new announcements or the new announcements that have been announced that we haven't checked out yet, what is kind of like your guide for an Android developer who's sort of exploring machine learning into their apps?
Sure. I think first step, I would go look or Google ML Kit. So that is now part of just the Android SDKs that you can use. So you import, it doesn't rely on Firebase anymore. So it's just an ML Kit, and these are standalone solutions that you can immediately use within your app. So it's things such as image classification. So detecting, is this, what is in this picture? Is there some kind of stuff? There's also smart reply, I think, barcode scanning, text. I think there's a bunch of stuff on text and all that, but there's like pre-packaged modules that you can use, and that is part of ML Kit. So I would recommend that as like a starting point for someone that hasn't done any ML before, or like really just want to get their toes wet with like looking at what is possible. So ML Kit is definitely the one to look at. And then if you want like more sort of accurate or more labeled stuff, so the on-device stuff can only do so much, right? There isn't like an infinite amount of space, so it doesn't know everything. So then you would look at Firebase ML, which is the kind of complement to ML Kit. It was previously Firebase ML Kit, but now it is Firebase ML. And that just gives you the cloud extension capabilities that you can use on some of these like models that you might be using. So I think it's like landmark detection for one. I might be wrong with that, but there's a few extra on Firebase that you can look at, and that gives you extra stuff. Also, you don't need any knowledge of ML at all to use those. And then if you want to get a little bit deeper, and maybe those current models that ML Kit provide isn't really good enough for you, then you would probably need to start looking at building your own model. So I did an example like 2 years ago of detecting different types of chip packets, like the difference between them. So if it's very South African context, but like flings versus cheese snacks versus cheese curls, you want to do something like very specific like that, then you would need your custom model. So right now, I would recommend looking at, in Firebase, there is an option for auto ML, and that you can upload your own custom images under a certain tag, and then classify and build this model in Firebase. So you don't need any coding knowledge, or you don't need to code any Python or anything there. And then download that model and then insert it into your Firebase, into your Android app. And there's also a great code lab that walks through this process, or it also walks through the process of using a Colab notebook to actually generate this model and like upload the data and use Python to generate your own custom model. So there is a code base, not a code base, a code lab that can help you with that as well. So yeah, those are like the sort of starting points, and where I wouldn't start with a custom model first. I would do the ML Kit first.
Okay, so I think one thing I want to, and I think 2 weeks ago, I had this conversation. It had been a side conversation I've had with a couple of developers, and also in sort of like advising new people coming into technology or taking up Android development. People want to be ready and have all the skill sets so that when you get into the first job, you can just, hit the ground running and, not be lost. Okay, I'm going to break this into two questions. The first question is the cliche about to be a good programmer, you have to have a problem-solving mindset. I hear this all the time. You don't need to be so good at math. You don't need to be like the smartest kid on the block. You just need to have a problem-solving mindset. You need to think logically. So that is my first question. And then the second question would be, when people, are really excited about the new launches that come up, optimizing your app or introducing ML capabilities, what kind of general advice would you give people to, like, do you know what, before you jump into these amazing things, here are some of the basics you should really, really nail or you should really, really do before you really think of adding all the bells and whistles to your app. So it's the problem-solving mindset and that whole myth of you don't need to be a genius, you don't need to be an expert in mathematics and statistics to do, programming. And then, yes, we can now come to this, how should you take your career, like just stepwise?
Sure. I think the first part about looking at how to become a good programmer, or at least in like the Android perspective, I would say don't worry too much about like perfecting everything before starting something, because like I mentioned earlier, you'll never get to that perfect point because nobody has. There is no such thing as like the perfect programmer or somebody that knows how to do everything. So my advice would be just start doing something. And then my second point would be like ask for feedback and just try get other people's opinions on what you've made. So if you're fortunate enough to be like maybe working at a company that has senior people, this is the best place to learn, because you can ask senior developers, like, what am I doing? Am I doing this correctly? Or like, give me some feedback on how I could make this better. And if you're still maybe studying at university, or you haven't got like some other senior people nearby, I would recommend just trying to learn from others that are maybe online. So just following a lot of like maybe more experienced programmers that have got sample code online. So looking at a lot of samples, maybe specifically Android related, if that's what you're looking at, and just learning and like trying to understand how they've done that problem or how they've solved that problem and what makes it more elegant in that way. With regards to like logic problems, I mean, yeah, there's 1,000 ways to solve different logic problems. So I would recommend just looking at things like, if you're trying to better in that respect, like looking at something like HackerRank, or there's a lot of different like LeetCode. I think there's a bunch of places where you can like practice these sort of logical problems if you feel you're lacking in that. And then the second part of your question, I've forgotten it already. It's been like 3 minutes.
Yeah. The second part of the question had to do with like, okay, now there's this new features that have come out and I just want to jump on them. I want to learn them. I want to be an expert at this so that when I'm going for my job, I can tell them, oh, I'm an Android developer and I know how to use ML Kit and all those things. So what is that sort of progression to like in real life? At work, you may not even need those things. So depending on your project, and then if maybe your project actually needs those things, you can actually stepwise go learn them. So what sort of assurance can you give newbie or even intermediate programmers about, when these new things come up, it's not something that you should get extremely excited about?
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of jump on a lot of these. They kind of, I think of it sometimes as like a bandwagon, like, yeah, there's nothing, let me all go and try it. And a lot of the time, it's actually not really necessary. Like for me, what I do is if I really need it, or if I feel like if there's a new announcement about some new framework or some new development, and I know about it, so I learn about what exactly it is and like maybe how it's better than what I've currently got. And if that is like a compelling enough reason for me to go learn a bit deeper, then I go and learn a bit deeper about that certain topic or API or framework. But a lot of the time, a lot of stuff, like I actually just don't have the time or actually need to know everything about all these new frameworks and everything. So mainly it's just what I do is like I follow a bunch of different newsletters, kind of scan the headlines, see, okay, does this like kind of sound like it would affect me in my development every day? Yes, it does. Let me learn a bit more. Or no, like maybe it's Android TV related and I'm not currently working on anything TV related. So then I wouldn't even look at going and diving into that unless it really interested me, unless I was like, ooh, I love TV stuff, so let me go and like try it out and see what the new stuff is. So yeah, I wouldn't be overwhelmed and like trying to jump on every single thing that comes by, because in the programming industry, there will always be something new. So trying to keep up with every single thing is going to be really hard. So rather just like pick and choose the things that might affect you or like that you think are of big interest to you, and kind of learn those things, and maybe just like deprioritize the less important or less currently important things that you are using. Yeah.
Okay, so we have 2 questions that have come through. I'm going to put the first one on the screen. It says, regarding the intro tooling you've mentioned, like TensorFlow Lite, Firebase ML, AutoML, is there a general parity between the capabilities of the Android and the iOS platforms?
As far as I understand, yes. I haven't particularly done iOS. I haven't looked at the iOS stuff in a long time, so I could be wrong. But from what was true 2 years ago when I did look at the iOS stuff, it was very, very similar stuff. So at least from the Firebase ML kit stuff that was looked at then, obviously that's now changed. But I believe you can, like TensorFlow has a big focus in working on iOS as well. So a lot of the models and everything that you create should work on iOS. There's maybe some intricacies that I'm not aware of, but as far as I'm concerned, I think everything you do on Android should be possible on iOS.
Yeah, I think I was also looking at the documentation yesterday, and I can actually say that there's a lot of, I mean, there usually are maybe caveats in 1 or 2 places when they tell you this is not yet ready or this doesn't work here. But I mean, it's kind of like a lot of stuff was really, I mean, even for people doing things sort of like cross-platform with, say, like Flutter, right? And then there's the whole Flutterfire library, and then there's all these things actually being put so that it's actually easy for you to access these capabilities. So there was one fun question here, and I'm just going to put it here. And the person was like, are there any ML AI capabilities that you've implemented at work or for fun? Yeah, so I'm going to try and look for your blog back from 2 years ago, just in case people can grab it and look for it. But I think I'll also just, first of all, check out rigaru.dev. That's where, I'm not going to ask you about Rigaru right now, but I'm just going to tell them to check out rigaru.dev, and then follow you on Twitter at Rigaru. You can find a lot of her blog posts, a lot of things about the technology she plays around with. Rebecca does write and give back a lot to the community. So, but I'm going to still allow you answer that question and maybe just take us through more like how you went through what the whole idea was, and then what the experience was like, just picking a specific ML AI capability and then playing around with it for fun.
Sure. So I was actually particularly trying to, because I don't know, back in the day, there was a bunch of people doing like, is this a hot dog or not? I don't know if you remember that. It was like a hot dog or not app. Yeah. And then you would like take a picture or like just like scan your phone around, and then it would say, yes, it's a hot dog, or no, it's not a hot dog. And I wanted to just do something fun that was also custom. So that blog post that you linked was basically an app that was detecting the difference, or like you would show it a crisps packet or chip packet, whatever you refer to it as, and then it would say, yes, it is flings or cheese snacks or all these different kinds of South African specific chips. But basically it was like a custom model trained on those different kinds of chip packets. And I actually re-looked at that this last week since the new stuff has been announced, and a lot of what's in that blog post is actually now outdated, which is bad for the blog post, but great for everyone that's trying to make their own custom model, because it means that it's a lot easier these days. So you don't need to do a lot of the stuff that I was doing there, where I was like, a lot of things were like manual, working with Python and TensorFlow and installing all of that. So I would recommend looking at the code labs, the latest code labs for working with TensorFlow Lite, because they have been updated to the new way in which you can create your own model. And yeah, it's a little bit easier, so you don't have to go through the pain that I did 2 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So I have 2 questions for you. before I let you go. The first question, and then this is a surprise question. When are you coming to Nigeria? You could have been an Android GD for 4 or 5 years, and we still haven't had you come be in Nigeria, demo in Nigeria. A lot of
terrible.
Everything in Nigeria. See us.
I need to make a plan, that's for sure. I think like the last 2 years I've been saying to you, I've been like, I'm coming to Nigeria, Needy. I'm gonna come. But it just hasn't happened. And yeah, lockdown has happened and this year is basically a write-off. So maybe next year, I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, I need a visa to come to Nigeria. Can you believe that?
Can you believe that, right? I also need a visa to come to South Africa. How many of the events have I missed? Because my visa comes out one day after the event has held, right? Or expires 1 week before the event is going to hold. So I need to work with you guys and the team at GD's Johannesburg to make sure that all the events I'm can be actually scheduled properly. And then second question, fantastic. It has skipped from my head and it's coming back right now. So when you're learning stuff, when you're experimenting with stuff, you write about it. So for your own sort of like career, you've talked a lot about community, you've talked about things around mentorship, working with senior devs. Can you really just share a bit about what blogging or writing about your experience as a software, what has that done for you, the way you learn, and for maybe your reputation or for your career? I mean, how influential has writing been for you? And what can you advise upcoming developers or even established developers to do about writing?
Yeah, it's been such an interesting journey for me because I had a blog like as soon as I finished university. I was like, oh, I've got this I had at that time a Lego robot that I was like struggling with, and I was like, there's nothing on the internet, so I'm gonna put stuff on there. And I just kind of wrote about it because I was so frustrated from struggling and not finding anything. So I thought maybe someone will benefit from this. I don't know if the blog post is still up. I probably deleted it. But anyway, so that's how I kind of started. And since then, it's been such a, like, I don't know, it's not been what I've expected because it's given me so much more than I could have ever expected. I've met so many different people across the world because I've written blog posts, which is mind-blowing for me. I mean, I've met you, Aditi, which is cool, right? Like someone in a totally different country that's like doing something maybe similar, or, you know, just it's really been career changing for me to just put myself out there and write. First of all, for myself, it's been really, it really has helped my writing skills, for one, because I've become a better writer, because I've had to like proofread and adjust what I'm writing and actually be very succinct and precise about what I'm writing about. And it's also made me learn a lot more, because when you write something down and you're publishing it to the world, you want to be really sure that what you're writing down is correct. So it often leads me to actually diving deeper into a problem maybe that I face, and maybe even finding different solutions whilst I'm writing up a blog post, because I've realized what I've written is actually not the best solution. So it's really helped me personally grow as a developer, but then also just become part of the community and be like getting people saying, like random people saying on the internet, thank you so much for this. It really helped me understand this concept. The way you've taught this, or the way you've structured this blog post, is different from other ways of teaching, and it's really just changed how I thought about something. So like just being able to hear that, and like being able to teach other people and hearing that they've learned and like gain something from what you've written has been really fulfilling, if that's the correct term.
All the way to becoming a well-site author, like that blew my mind. And yeah, how has that been as well? What's the feedback from the course and students and stuff like that?
So you said Pluralsight, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I did one course in Pluralsight from Constraint Lab, and that was also interesting. It definitely was a lot harder than I was expecting, because it needs to go through like editing processes and like approval processes. So it's a lot harder to do a course than to just write on your blog, because you can decide if you want to post it or not. Whereas you have like third-party editors that need to like go and make it nicer, you know, edit the audio, make sure everything sounds good. So yeah, Pluralsight was hard, but it was also rewarding, because I think a lot of people, I think in the Andela scholarship, in the Google Plural, there was a Google Pluralsight scholarship that happened. I think a lot of people went through that and were able to watch that course as well, which was really also cool, because people learn from me and are able to produce something because of what I've taught them, which is amazing.
Awesome. So last question of the day. I was about to say goodbye, but a question came forward, and I would like, to support the person who asked the question. Can a junior Android developer Kotlin with zero knowledge of ML integrate ML models like NLP, natural language processing, to an Android app? Seems like an obvious question.
Yes. So there are some pre-made models that might solve your problem exactly. I don't know what exact problem you're trying to solve, but it's maybe worth having a look at ML kits, because there are some natural language processing models there. So Smart Reply, and I think there's like auto detection of languages and stuff like that. So definitely have a look at ML kits. You don't need to know anything about TensorFlow or about machine learning to actually use ML kits. So I would highly recommend looking at that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rebecca. This has been an awesome 45 minutes. Like I said, we're up against the renewed or restarted premiership. So if few of our viewers are not here, they will be watching this and watching the recap, and I expect a few questions probably to come through later. And for those of you who are watching and you have your questions, you can drop them in the comments, or you can reach to Rebecca on Twitter at Rigaroo. I think almost everywhere on the internet you are Rigaroo. If I do find somebody else with a Rigaroo, I'll let you know, so we can actually hold the person to like, hey, what are you doing with this, Monica? But anyway, thank you so much for sharing your Saturday with us. It's been an awesome evening learning from you, and hope you do have a nice day and come out of the lockdown better, stronger, with more articles and ready to come to Nigeria.
Cool. Thank you so much, Anita. It's been great to chat to you. Hope to see you soon in Nigeria.
Hope to see you soon. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.